Hello everyone, I'm Janus and welcome back to the Blender rigging practice. So last time we modeled a spaceship. Here's one that I made, but yours is probably quite similar. It should have different moving pieces, for example turrets or landing gear that could be rotated and animated in a video game. But this time we will actually add a skeletal rig to it and use bones to animate it differently. And while both ways are valid options for rigging a hard surface model like this spaceship, there are some advantages that having a skeletal structure has. And the main advantage is that we can use some of the Blender tools to have an easier time for animating it. So that we don't actually have to individually rotate all the points, but we can kind of use some constraints and tracking options. While for this spaceship, it might not even be completely necessary because it's so simple that we can simply use, hand animate all those objects. For a more complex mesh, like some complex mech model with some pistons, for example, it could take much more advantage of having this kind of well-defined inverse kinematics structure on its rig. But to learn, we will add a rig for this mesh as well. So in order to do that, we should first add an armature to the mesh. And the armature should begin from the pivot point of the mesh. So in this case, the pivot point of this spaceship is in the middle. So if I rotate the spaceship, it rotates around its pivot point, which is quite what you would probably want when you have this kind of model in your game. We also should undo a little bit of our previous work in the sense that we should combine those individual pieces again. So, all right, before adding the armature, let's first do that. So to combine any pieces, I will select the pieces one by one. For example, I will first select the turret and then select the body so that the body is selected last. It is also displayed by this brighter yellow line around this last selected object. And now if I press Ctrl J, it will actually merge them together so that the last selected object remains, in this case spaceship. And I can repeat it for other objects. Let's shift select the landing gear and then shift select the body again and Ctrl J to join them together. And finally, I also have the back landing gear, but this one uses the mirror modifier that the spaceship doesn't. And this means that I first need to apply the mirror modifier. So I will press this little arrow here and choose apply. All right, and now I can join it to the rest of the body with Ctrl J. Right, now we are back to a single mesh and ready to add the armature. So as I said, the armature should start from the pivot point of the model. It's just a good practice to line them up. So let's do that. If you don't have your 3D cursor, this little striped circle to the exact position of the pivot point, which I currently conveniently have. So let me just place it somewhere else, to the word origin, for example, then first you can select the object where you want to move your 3D cursor, place and press Shift S and choose cursor to active to move it to the active object. So now it's on the right location and we are ready to add an armature. And for that I will press Shift A and select armature. Alright, but I don't see anything. It added an armature, it actually added one bone, but it's inside our mesh, as you can see. So in order to make it visible, you need to select the armature that you made, go to the data properties, and then open up the viewport display, and then check the in front checkbox. This will make it always visible, even when it's inside a mesh. Alright, there are also some other things that you can change here. For example, you can change how the bone is rendered, but the tetrahedral is probably the most convenient and practical look for the bones. But overall, they don't actually have any volume. Their bones are basically just an edges that have a start point and an end point. It just uses this tetrahedral shape to show where they start and end are located. So now I will go to the right view by pressing the number 3 on the numpad, and let's go to the edit mode to edit the bone, and here I can select the vertices of the bone. Let's select the top part and actually move it to align with the view of or with the direction of the spaceship. So this is logical. This is our root bone, and it should kind of point where the spaceship is going. All right. Now to add more bones, we can actually just extrude it. So I will look it from the right view again, use the E key, and we can have a nice skeleton structure. All right, maybe not that much. So what I will do is I will want to have a separate bones that are not connected directly to the root bones, but have a little bit of offset from it. And the easiest way to separate the bone is to just extrude it a couple of times, like have like one extra bone in the middle, and then let's just select the middle bone, press X, and delete this bone. And as you can see, it is replaced with a dotted line. And if I open the armature again, we can go to under the bones. We can see that this second bone is parented under the first bone. I think to better distinguish between them, let's give them a proper names as well. So the first one is a root bone, and the second bone is a turret bone. Nice. And now I can move this bone around by selecting it, pressing G to use the grab tool, and let's move the turret bone. Okay, I will keep it here. I will actually move it here. And let's use GX to move it to the left a bit and place it exactly where the turret should be. Now, when working with bones, it's really important to notice that the bone beginning point should always be is always the rotation axis of the object. So in this case, I actually want to rotate the turret around in the middle of where it actually connects the base. So I will need to move this bone kind of in the middle of where it's on this circle. I can look it from top as well and make sure it's as close to the middle as I can eyeball it. And now I will simply move the bottom part downwards a bit so it can still point towards the same direction. All right, so that's our first bone. Let's duplicate it by pressing Ctrl D, and we can have another bone for the the landing gear. So I will just move it here, maybe rotate it a bit, and yeah, kind of move it upwards. The length of this bone is actually not really necessary because it doesn't attach to anything else. However, since I've moved this a little bit off the center axis, I would like to move it back to the middle. And the way to do it like very precisely is by pressing N to show the property panel on the right or the selected objects information. Then I will go to the item, and here we can see it has its head and tail positions. We can just zero their x coordinates in this case, and this will place it exactly in the middle. All right, and now I will go to the right view again, Shift D, and make another duplicate to the back landing gears as well. And conveniently, because I looked it from the right way, it's already in the middle. All right, these are the landing gears. Maybe we should also make sure that the rotation point is where it is supposed to be. I might want to move this one up a bit, and I think the second one is okay. All right, so let's rename those as well. So this one is the front gear, and this is the back gear. Very good. Now, next, I would like to actually connect this armature to the spaceship. And let's go back to the object mode, pressing the tab, and to connect or to actually assign the mesh under the armature, I simply need to parent it under the armature. Once again, the easiest way of doing it, how you can parent things, is by holding down the shift and dragging the spaceship under the armature. But this doesn't prompt us any options, so it just parents it. So I pressed Ctrl C to take it back, and instead I will use a different way of parenting. I will select first the mesh, and then shift select the armature, so that the armature is selected last, and then press Ctrl P to have a parent window. And here we can use an armature deform to parent. But in this case, I actually don't want to use the automatic weights that I showed in my animation overview video. Instead, I will just use the empty groups. All right, and now they are connected. The spaceship is under the armature, but even if I go to the pose mode of the armature, it doesn't actually affect any vertices of the mesh. We don't have anything on this group. Okay, let's now go to the object. And here we can see that for each bone that we had, the Blender has created a different vertex group. So it can assign vertices under different bones with different weights, and this is what the vertex groups also are meant for. But I can't do it in the object mode. Instead, we should go to the edit mode. Right. So just selecting the mesh, pressing tab and going to the edit mode. Now I can select different parts of the spaceship and assign them with different weights. In this case, we want to assign everything with weight of 1 to different bones. For this, I first want to select all the body parts of the mesh that should not individually move and assign them under the root bone. For this, I need to select them, and the easiest way to select everything all at once is hovering some area with mouse and pressing L key. And this will select a connected region. But as you can see, since I've also added the UV unwrapping it and UV seams, the seams are actually bounding the selection. And it takes a little bit of time to actually select all those areas one by one. So to make it a little bit more convenient, you can simply open up the selection tab. When you selected something with L, it opened, and instead of seam delimit, just use the normal one, and now it selects the entire connected region all at once, despite seams. So I think the body is one object, also the thrusters, and even the base of the turret can also be part of the base body of the mesh. Alright, now let's select the root and press assign. Alright, and it's they are nicely assigned under this group. Now let's select the turret parts, assign them to the turret. Now I will select the front landing gear parts, assign them here, and back landing gears, and assign them there. Alright, and now just to check them, I can quickly go to the weight paint mode, and if you select different vertex groups here, Blender will highlight these areas. And as I already noticed, I think the last gear was unselected. Let me quickly see. Yeah, I need to go back to the edit mode to see what I'm selecting. Unfortunately, I selected this one as well, so I use double tap A to remove selection and try again. And assign this one to the back as well. Okay, let's check from the vertex paint. So we have the back landing gear, front landing gear, turret, and root. Yeah, I think all the surfaces are assigned, so I can go to the object mode and proceed. Let's test our rig. Now if I select the armature first and then go to the pose mode, I can rotate those bones, and as you can see, everything else will actually rotate with it. If it doesn't, then it means that the weights were not properly assigned, and you should go back, scroll back in this video. But yeah, we can test it, make sure that the rotation angles are all correct, and they seem to be. Very good. Now half of the lab is done, but in the second half I want to show you how you can actually simplify the animation process. And for this, we are using the constraints and tracker constraints for the bones that allow us to easily rotate them towards the point that we want. There are a lot of different constraints in Blender and cool features, but for this lab, we're simply using a simple track 2 constraints where we can define some empty object in a scene and point the bones towards this object. And this is the most suitable for like turrets that should probably point towards some object. But since we modeled the landing gears, we can also add this modifier for them as well. So first of all, we need these objects. So I will add a few tracker objects. Go to the object mode, press Shift A, and I will add this empty object and simply empty plane axis. Now if I move it out, you can see it's just a little like axis position in the world. Let's call the first one turret tracker. Now I will duplicate it, maybe zero out its X position again to move it in the middle of the world, and call this one front gear tracker, and repeat it again with the back gear tracker. Awesome. And now what I can do, I can add constraint that moves this point, this turret, to point at the target. So for this, I will select the armature again, go to the, in this case, I think I should go to the pose mode where I can select the bones. And here, if I select the bones, you can see that it has the bone constraint little icon here. So yeah, the bone needs to be selected, I guess. But here I can start adding bone constraints. Let's do it. And as you can see, there are many. There are some inverse kinematics constraints and limits to the angles, all definitely useful. But the task of this lab is to simply use the track 2 constraints. If you want to get fancy, you can obviously practice with some other constraints on your own as well. But the track 2 constraints are necessary to get the points. All right, so here for this constraint, I need a tracker, so I can use this picker to select one and hover over the started tracker and select it. Okay, and this bone has already moved. But it's not the correct way of moving it. It actually already tracks this tracker, so quickly go into the object mode. We can see it actually points towards this tracker, but it uses its top plane to point towards it, which is like not what we want. Instead, let's see what other options this track 2 constraint has. And mainly it has two things. It has track axis and up direction. And the up direction will define which side it considers to be up and which side should point towards it. So the y-axis was probably pointing like the y-axis is the horizontal axis in Blender, so it used like a top direction to track to, but we can use x will be the sideways, And C axis is actually should be one that's that we are interested in, because it's the green one that should follow the correct axis. But for now, it doesn't seem to be actually tracking this point anymore. If I go to the object mode and move the point around, yeah, it definitely stopped tracking. Let's go to the pose mode and see what's wrong. And the thing is that it actually uses the combination of the up direction but also the tracking axis direction, but they can't be the same one. Then it stops tracking. If you switch them to something else, you can see that it actually starts tracking again. And in this case, the y-axis seemed to be correct one, so now it's pointing towards this tracker, but something else seems to be wrong. And the thing that's wrong is that it's currently, what's actually going on, if I hide the spaceship for a moment, okay, I can't hide the body. It's actually, let's use this wireframe rendering. No, let's just use the X-ray. You can see it's actually upside down. Yeah. And this is also because, well, this tracking, while we can set which axis it actually tracks to, it kind of doesn't really know. Okay, it knows one, but not the correct one. But kind of the tracker itself kind of leaves it undefined which way it is rotated around this axis. And currently it's rotated upside down, so yeah, not that nice. And the way we fix it is actually by going to the edit mode and edit the bone. So yeah, always go to the, select the armature, go to the edit mode, and we need to rotate the bone. And you can't simply rotate the bone around its axis by using the rotation tool. Maybe you even can, but it's a bit finicky. However, from the node properties, so in the N tab, you can open it up again if you closed it. It has roll option, and roll is the rotation around its axis. So instead of it's currently around 0, almost. Let's make it 180. All right. Now, if I go to the object mode, it has rolled it over in 180 degrees, and it's nice and correct way again. All right, so let's repeat this process for the landing gear as well, since you should have multiple moving parts. Let me select the front gear first. Go to the pose mode, add a constraint, track 2, the axis, and I think the C axis is still suitable for this one. It's just still a C axis that we're using. And let's choose the side. The C ones won't work, although they look that they are correct. But the Y one is, in this case, correct one as well. It can be it might not always be Y, depending on where what your pieces are. It can sometimes be other axis. It just happened to me that those objects are, in some sense, quite similarly tracking. Just try to understand which axis corresponds to which letter. All right, so let's add for the back one as well the track 2 constraint and use the y-axis. No. Yeah, C up, Y. And yeah, they are still reversed, but as we know, we have a medicine for that. Let's go to the edit mode and roll these bones over. So I'll select the back one, set this roll to 180, and forward one as well. go to object mode, and now if I move these trackers, they're nicely tracking. Yeah, it doesn't switch that gracefully over the like on the flip side, but there are some limitations of trackers as well. But yeah, now it's rigged. In my previous video, I showed you quick example how to make animations as well that you can export for the game. But for this lab, it's actually not needed to add any animation. Just make the rig, add the trackers, and make sure that everything is correctly configured and named, and this will give you the points. That's all for this lab. Submit it and receive the 2 easy points, I hope. I hope you like this lab and have a nice rest of the week. Goodbye.